made the pivot to Android or pivot to mobile? I
Mhm.
guess, when was it, first of all? And second of all, at
Yeah,
what scale were you guys at that time?
so I think the web application was under 1 million users active. And so it wasn't clear. So for a while we went with both. So we went with mobile and web, but it became over time clear that the web just needs different, the mobile application just needs different things. So just the way you communicate to your server needs to be much more efficient, fewer round trips. As you start investigating what networks look like around the world, you realize you need like different solutions. And so we're just basically focused on that. So having messages being small and efficient, reliable. I think that was one of the big advantages that we kind of figured out early on that it's important. So as soon as we made, I don't know, let's say 10% reliability improvements, we saw big jumps in users like across the world. And actually kind of funny, initially we didn't even split our users by countries. So we just saw user growth, we were happy, kind of naively assumed that they're in the US. But then I remember someone made a graph saying, hey, let's look at users by countries. I know it sounds obvious, but we weren't thinking that much at the time. So we did that, and then we realized, oh wow, they're like kind of spread all over the world. So we saw growth in like Latin America, Middle East, India, Bangladesh. So it was everywhere, and we're like, wow, it's basically everywhere. So we need to focus on those networks over there and those devices. So then, yeah, lots of things that we improved on from there. But yeah, I guess another important thing is to kind of look at your data. So basically your signal comes from your users, right? So you just need to kind of pay attention to it. And there's many ways to do that, of course, but just looking at the data kind of told us, okay, here's what we should do next.
And how much of your job was, let's say, focused on the product side versus growth hacking, I guess? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, obviously it depends on the startup, but for us, we were pretty lucky to have good funding. So our main focus was growth. So, if today you have X users, you want in a week to have X plus, I don't know, some percentage, depending on the application, right? And not everyone has to grow exponentially, but for a social network or messaging network, it's very important that they're connected to the graph, right? So you want to grow in a fashion where the new users that join, they find their friends, and then obviously they stay on the app more. So that was kind of our main focus, and we just basically looked at, okay, what can we do so that the people that join, they first of all love the product, and then they invite their friends. So from there, you kind of figure out your strategy is, you want to improve retention, and you want to ask people to invite their friends, and therefore you kind of grow organically. And I mean, that was, it's not like we figured it out really quickly. We tried many growth, I guess, tactics, including paid advertising, appearing in like online news sites, whatever. But we found for us, for this specific case of messaging, the best growth came from just people inviting their friends.
And so was your North Star metric time spent on the app, or what sort
Yeah,
of metric kind of drove that?
that's a good question. It's not that simple. So we had the dashboard that we looked at every day, and it didn't have just one thing, but obviously time spent was one of the things. It's easy to kind of fall into the trap of let's optimize for time spent, but then you get into some weird solutions, right? Like short term good, but then long term not great. So we looked at everything. We looked at number of calls, we looked at how many friends they're inviting, time spent, of course. Basically, let's say maybe 6 main graphs. So every time we had an experiment, we'd compare those two side by side, see if it's significant, just basic A/B testing. But I don't think we ever came up with like, this is just one graph we need to optimize. Of course, you can do that, but I would say just have a few metrics just to, keep things in check. Because you might optimize one thing, but really hurt another thing. So it's not, yeah, it's kind of a function of all these. So whatever, however you mix them, it's up to you. Yeah.
At what point did it become clear that Bangladesh is a pretty significant market for you guys?
Um, so I think a lot of people in Bangladesh work abroad, like many other countries, and they just constantly wanted to stay in touch with their family and friends, obviously back home, and that resonated very well with our product, and because obviously that's kind of how we built it in the first place. Like we were working in the United States, and we came from like Europe and Asia, and from everywhere. Um, so it was a very strong. It resonated very strongly with the product. And in terms of, I mean, you could see it like at some point, I think the growth was very strong. So just day by day, you would see strong numbers. And then from there on, we just kind of optimized. Yeah. But like I said, you don't have a lot of resources. So you can't really do too much for one country. Let's say you want to go and optimize things for local like markets, but having only like mostly engineers, it's kind of hard to do that. So yeah, we focused a little bit, but not too much. I would say if you build for like, let's say you look at all the devices out there, all the networks, obviously the best thing would be to build for like the lowest common denominator, right? So if your app works on say a 2G network, it's going to work, really well on LTE. So just building for that, I think was a good idea.
And so yeah, I mean, totally understand that you can't necessarily optimize too much across specific markets, but what were some things that you saw, I guess, in terms of user habits in the Bangladesh market? How did you approach acquisition? I guess and what sort of optimization paths did you take?
Yeah, so I think one thing where we saw strong growth was that people just used it a lot. So if just look at app opens, for example, it was like more than 20 per day. So you can tell like this is their main app that they use on the phone. So just based on that, we came up with some ideas to optimize. Like first of all, if you open an app 20 times a day, you don't want it to be slow, right? So if it takes like 3 seconds to open, you're not gonna like it. So we optimized for app open, we optimized for like sending messages quickly, making calls, making sure when you make a call, the other side receives it quickly, right, and reliably. All sorts of things can happen with these devices. Like apps can get killed, networks can like drop your connections. Just when you start digging into the problems, you kind of figured out many things that I guess most people wouldn't be aware. So that's why I guess one lesson is to just start, you build your thing in kind of a simple way, and then you dig deeper from there.
The other question, and there's a few other questions that have come in, but the other question is, so, did you, just curious about the fundraising journey of Emo. Where did you raise your venture capital from, and what was the perspective of the investors, I guess, when it came to this growth versus profitability question?
Yeah. So first of all, we were very lucky to have George, who funded the initial round. So we didn't think about funding for a long time, but when we were growing quite quickly, we went out to a bunch of venture capitalists and we showed them our growth. And honestly, most of them didn't believe us. So they're like, yeah, there's no way you have 100 million, whatever it was at the time, right? They're like, maybe that's accounts. We're like, no, it's like daily users. And we showed them graphs and things like that. And they said, oh, you must be buying them. We're like, no, like they would be quite expensive to like pay $5 per user. And then they might not even be active, right? So it's pointless. I would say I mean, obviously you need more money, right? So your startup is a function of growth and not running out of money. Yeah. So we're lucky to have good funding, but so we didn't need external funding. We just thought like maybe we'll do like just strategical, like someone that can help us, can help with like pre-installs, things like that. But it didn't really work out for us. So yeah, if you see like first of all, a lot of VCs live in the United States, right? So they don't really understand a lot of the world. Maybe like that changed because of WhatsApp and all these things, right? They realize like, actually, there's users all over the world. And so I would say back in 2015, a lot of them did not get it. I hope it changed, but yeah, not very, they weren't very optimistic at the time. I'm not sure why.
So what was the exit strategy for, the founders and also the investors who did put in? It was,
yeah, I mean, we didn't have an exit strategy from the beginning. We just knew that with lots of users, there's got to be a way to monetize. So I guess we were just optimistic about that. And yeah, we basically got acquired in 2018 by a larger company, but we didn't have a strategy to start with. We just knew we want to build something for lots of people, and communication was basically the key idea. Like everybody needs to communicate. And you can see now there's basically lots of chat apps. So I guess the idea was that there were going to be one winner. And there, you can say WhatsApp is a winner, but for example, Slack is also pretty good, right? So there's lots of, like, Zoom is pretty good. This is also a communication app. This winner takes all and like don't fund anyone else is not, I don't know if it's a great strategy. Of course, you want to be investing in WhatsApp, so you get like the big upside, but that was also kind of a, Facebook kind of saved them, I would say. Everyone else tried to figure out, like, let's make money. Like Zoom is making subscription money, they're a public company, right? So yeah, I don't think, I mean, it's great to have a strategy, but it's hard, right? You just kind of have to adapt and see what your customers want.
You mentioned a few times about kind of your customer give or users give the signal. Beyond, looking at the different graphs, how else did you approach that, right? User interaction, user feedback.
Yeah, great question. So as engineers, I think we got caught up too much in like, let's just look at data, right? And that's great. I mean, obviously you look at data, you try to infer things from it, but also just talk to your users, like try to visit them where they live, create, I don't know, like communities of people. I don't think we did enough of that. And you can see that's working great for like companies like Reddit and Discord, and in the crypto world more recently, community is very important. So that's something we did not push on too much. Honestly, that was something we ignored, and that wasn't great. But try to get involved, have calls with your users, try to get people to be excited about your product, and they will help you grow it. Yeah, I mean, basically, that's what crypto is, right? It's like like-minded people that have a currency, right? But they're doing different things. So it's not like, I don't think it's going to be winner take all for sure. And it was kind of similar with social apps. Like, TikTok is like for kids. I think that's great. Or like, different communities. But I don't think we did enough of that. We were very hardcore on like A/B testing and like, quantity versus quality. But you need to do both. Like, it is not like either or. Just do both.